our culture promotes perfection, and we're all pushed very hard to aim for the best. But what if good enough was better? We'll listen to Stephen Phillips, founder and CEO of ZappiStore, on that topic now. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been coming to research conferences for probably 10, 15 years, and one of the things I've noticed, I was noticing it with a couple of the presentations just now, is that when I first started going to research conferences, people stood behind the lectern with their notes and largely read their notes. Now everyone is strolling the stage like a politician without any notes. So we're all, these presenters are all making a huge effort to get you to think about them and focus on me and look at me. But it also seems to be inversely correlated with the number of people actually watching the presenter. Because while that's been happening, everyone else has been looking at Twitter and typing emails. So it seems to be an interesting juxtaposition of the trends. So my name is Steve Phillips. I've been in market research in a number of organizations for probably just over 20 years. I'm a big fan of market research. I think it's a great industry. I've made a lot of friends. I think there's some very smart people involved. And it's a great place to be right now. There's a lot of innovation going on. I think, and the point of my talk is that I think a lot of the time we're too perfectionist and we spend too much time focused on the ideas behind market research, which has always been our strength. So we've always brought in great learning from academics, from modelers, from maths, from psychology, ethnography, and we brought this learning in, and we've become great at understanding people's behavior, great at understanding what people do, how they think, what they believe in, but not necessarily great at executing the process underneath. So we've got wonderful ideas, but too often I think we're not as strong as we need to be on the execution. And that, I think, is holding us back as an industry. So my plea is for us to be a little better at pushing things through, maybe not perfectly, but pushing things through, because I think that good enough research is actually better for the business climate today. And this is my favorite cartoon at the moment. I think you can probably read it. So unfortunately, our clients are now retired, despite the fact that they've finished all their market research. So I want to take this opportunity to see how true this is. So can everyone, I know we're coming up to lunch, so let's stretch a little. If you're in a research agency, do you mind standing up for a minute? Just stand up, everyone in a market research agency. Thank you. And then I would like you to raise your hand if you've ever had to turn around to a client and say, yes, we can do that, but unfortunately we don't have the time by the time you need to make your decision. So if you've had that issue, okay, thank you. And also keep your hand up, and raise your other hand so we can properly stretch. If you've also had to say to a client, yes, I can do that for you, but unfortunately your budget is not big enough. Okay, good to see. Maybe clients, do you want to stand up? Thank you, agency folks. Clients, can you stand up? Can you raise your hands, clients, if you've had to turn around to an internal person and said, yes, we can get the information, but not in the time that you need to? So, okay, most hands going up. And the same thing in terms of budget. Have you suffered from budget issues that you can't get that? Okay. So you get my point, I think. We need to, and see, I'm going to look at my notes. We need to work around these three big issues that we have in industry. Time, we know the issues around time. Money, we're getting more and more demands from this, but then also expertise. We need to be able to get our expertise in a situation where we can turn around projects quickly, turn around projects cost effectively. There's reasons behind this. In the 80s, 90s, I think when I started out in market research, brands had maybe one big problem to solve, one big strategic issue for the year. So maybe it was, what's the strategy for the brand? That would lead into a big TV campaign. And that was at the time when, frankly, posters were just a still from the TV campaign. And they were just being put out, maybe a bit of point-of-sale material. But now we've got a lot more decisions to make. There are more competitors. There are more media channels. There are more retail channels. There are more product launches. And all of these should have market research being integral to their implementation. Because of these problems with time and money and expertise, we are not necessarily able to service those questions, deal with those business issues in a way that we should be able to. And that's why clients are moving elsewhere. So clients are looking at whether it's SurveyMonkey DIY, where there's no real strength of expertise. Maybe it's social media, which is very real time, but as we heard from Ben Page earlier, quite often is not telling you the right answer. But they're having to go there because they're having to make quick and inexpensive business decisions. So let's think about where are we losing this time and money. One of my favorite quotes recently was from the CMO of Domino's Pizza. So normally, if we were doing a market research project and we were thinking about Domino's Pizza, we'd probably say, what's our target audience? And our target audience might be men aged 25 to 45 who like sports, invite friends round to come and drink a beer and enjoy a pizza whilst they're watching the big game. And that's our core target market. But the Domino's Pizza CMO said, my target market is anyone with a stomach. So are we overthinking some of these issues around sampling and spending too much time and money on it? If we think of the value that we as researchers add, it's in two core places. It's at the beginning of it in terms of research design. It's are we asking the right questions? Are we doing the right method? Are we approaching this in the right way? Are we setting up the analytic structure in the right way? And then at the end, it's interpreting that data and specifically making recommendations. That's where we're really good. That's our expertise. Not on this in-between stuff about programming surveys and fielding and checking data tables and fiddling with PowerPoint. That's not adding value. That's the stuff we shouldn't be spending time on. So my appeal is that we stop thinking in terms of perfect projects, perfect research, overthinking every aspect of it, and instead think that our job is to help businesses make progress, help businesses make decisions, and use our abilities, our consulting abilities, our design abilities, our understanding of consumers to help them on that path. Businesses, as Matt was talking about yesterday from Gut Check, businesses are going into an agile world. We know this, we hear about it a lot. Kristen's talk yesterday about growth hacking is all related to this. They're becoming more agile, they're becoming more iterative. Now, in the old world of market research, if you're looking at a product or a concept or an advertising development, you might have two projects, if you're lucky. Right at the beginning, maybe some qualitative to look at consumer needs, and at the end, a big bases test or a big link test, perhaps. And that was great. That was fine for that world. Now we're going into a world of agile development, and both of those methodologies simply take too long to be incorporated. But I think there's a huge opportunity for us here. As an industry, we have a huge opportunity. If we can get the execution right, then we can be fully invested in that entire development process. If we can turn around projects at a time and a cost effectiveness, it allows us to be used more often throughout the process, so we become more integral to business decision making. So we had an example at Zappi the other day where we had a client that we'd already done a couple of ad tests, and then just 2 days, literally 2 days before the ad was going to air, the agency came to the client and said, look, we've got 2 edits of this ad. We've got one edit, which is the one we discussed in meetings and that you wanted, and then our creatives have gone off and created something slightly different, which we think is better. It's got a better feel for it, a bit more excitement. And the client was nervous. They gave us a call at 2 o'clock. By 2:15, we had both ad tests in field. By 4:15, they had the results, and by 5 o'clock, they were making a decision. Now, the nice thing from the client's perspective was that the client was right, not the ad agency, which probably happens more often than we'd like to think. But that's the role that we can play when we create agile processes. In order to do that, we need to work out a way of scaling our expertise. In a world of more decisions, more research, and declining budgets, we have some great expertise out there, but they're being spread very thin. We've got to find a way as an industry to take that expertise and make that IP replicable. Replicable in a simple, efficient, cost-effective, and time-efficient manner. And we've then got to say, and we deserve to get paid for that IP. Because getting paid for a replicable, automated IP allows us to do the research and development to create new products and new services in the market research space. So that's what we're trying to do, is set up a way of replicating that expertise so that we can play a stronger role throughout the client decision making. And if we think about another industry, thinking about clothing, where do you buy your clothes? Do you go to a tailor and get them all? I'm sure some people do, but probably not many of us. Do you go to a tailor and get it beautifully, perfectly fitted? Takes a lot of time, slow, very expensive, but gorgeous. Or do you make it yourself? Do you have a sewing machine, a DIY process that you're making yourself? Or do you go to a clothes shop? In the clothes shop, the designer only designs that piece once and then has it replicated. But the designer is paid for the IP every single time an item is used. And because we have mass manufacturing, because we have the ability to have clothing stores where you can buy lots of things, people buy more clothes. People have more clothes now than they would have done 50 years ago when you didn't have the ability to mass produce great clothing. And that's what we believe the world of market research is going towards, and that's why we set up our store at Zappi, to give people the option of different brands of clothes, different types of clothes, different fit, different pricing. So for instance, on our site now, we have a Millward Brown ad test, and it's called eStatic for print advertising. We also have what we would describe as an own label. It's our own little static ad test. And clients can go on and choose. So they can go on and say, I want the Zappi test, or I want the own label Zappi test, or I want the Millward Brown test. And the difference between them is the Millward Brown one is more expensive, but it has a great deal more IP embedded in the product. It's got a database, it's got the link norms, it's got all of that great heritage, history, credibility associated with Millward Brown. And surprise, surprise, they sell more of that, we sell more of that product than we do of our own product, because clients will pay for IP, and it's replicable IP. The other thing that enables people to do, like Millward Brown, is instead of focus constantly on building new, on consulting around an individual product, because people can do iterative testing, they can have a consulting wrap around the campaign creation itself. My final couple of charts, sorry, I seem to be overrunning. This is a picture of the Nestle War Room, data room. So a couple of years ago, there was a bad story that went out about Nestle on social media, a very negative story. They didn't react very well. So they didn't react as quickly as they should have done, and the reaction was poor. They didn't send out the right message. So unfortunately, fortunately, they decided to learn from that, so they created this war room. And this war room, data war room, basically has real-time feeds of all the social media data they've got, any sales data they've got, various other bits of data coming into their data room so that they can make very quick, agile decisions about what they should do as a business. The sad thing about it is that this incredibly important, agile data room has no traditional market research data in it, which I think is a real wake-up call for our industry. We should not only be in that room, we should be running that room. We should be we're the ones who know about consumers, about data, about amalgamating data sources, about creating brand stories, but we're not there. And we're not there because we haven't solved those issues. So what we need to do is make sure that we can replicate our IP, have expertise, be involved in the decisions in real time at an affordable price point, and that should, using that structure, enable us to get into the war room, the data room, and be hopefully running it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. We'll be taking questions now. Please remember to state your name and company. Well, at the front, please.
Hi, Steve. JD from Ipsos, Mew House, the best house around. Very interesting question that you raise when it comes to price points on this. You know, when agencies look at their IP and what it's taken to invest in that, and then they go look at selling it, what is admittedly a stripped-down version of it, at a lower price point, then that obviously makes everybody nervous. Where do you see sort of the long-term economics of this playing out? I mean, you sort of made the argument that if companies are continuing to iterate, and we continue to have more bites at the cherry in terms of being able to be there, then maybe a lower price point gets us to sort of the same or similar levels of turnover. Or maybe, if you look at the value creation model, by automating and getting rid of all the labor-intensive stuff that eats away at margin, maybe we're not at a higher revenue point, but the margins are better because of the nature of the product that we're producing. I'm curious about your point of view on that.
I think I agree with you. I think you answered your question. I think the opportunity is that there's a lot of pressure on budgets, right? We know that. The opportunity is to do more research more often. So definitely iterative process, the Agile process allows us to do more research. Is each project going to be significantly lower priced? Yes, it is. But actually, if you think about the amount of effort involved in each project, certainly if it's a Zappi one, it's entirely automated, so there's no effort. So you have a situation where you're getting rewarded with virtually no cost associated for an individual project. So if we're getting iterative, then it's highly profitable. And as, I mean, we've heard from TNS and Rosie was talking about some of the innovation they've done. Ideally, you would have a better stream of money going back into the larger agencies that enables them to do more of that type of development, to do more of that type of modeling. Because if TNS are solving the issue of using social media data to predict where brands are going, that's a really important thing to be solving. But that must take a lot of time, money, and effort to create that research on research. And I think what I'd like to see is more time and effort being spent over there and getting rid of all the wasted time and effort on the execution underneath.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. Well, thanks again, Stephen.